Hi, my name is Genndy Tartakovsky. I was the director and producer for Star Wars Clone Wars.
This is Bryan Andrews. I was one of the writers and storyboard artists for this show.
I'm Paul Rudish, art director and writer and other stuff.
I'm Darrick Bachman. I'm one of the writers, and I'm also the production manager of Star Wars Clone Wars.
So one of the first things that we started doing for this new set is George definitely wanted to finish the story that we set up in episode 20 from the last season. Mainly the reasons for that is because his son was excited about to see how Ki-Adi-Mundi was going to get out of it and how it was going to finish. So our first order of business was to settle the score and finish the story. Paul, you want to talk about how the face on the gunship came about?
Just, thinking about like cool World War II P-15s and, Apache helicopters and stuff. You'd like to put the shark mouth on there and sort of like, let's do a tricked out paint job for the tricked out ARC troopers and right on. Let's do the Rancor face. And there it is.
One of the things about the pre-production artwork from Lucasfilm was that the clone troopers all had different paint jobs. It was more like a World War II Vietnam where the soldiers would all dress up their helmets and everything like that, and that's one of the inspirations for some of the Clone Wars art.
Actually, I think the original ARC Trooper stuff came from Hasbro, and they did the first idea for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we incorporated that into the first batch of cartoons. And then, isn't there a story from ILM?
Yeah, because we went up to get a kind of tour of ILM, and Rob Coleman was there, who's the supervising animator for the Star Wars movies. And he was telling us, thanks guys, you guys had created a whole lot of work for us, because now George liked what you guys did in the first batch, that he made us give all the ARC troopers the skirts.
So then they had to go back and re-render all the scenes they had already finished with skirts and racing stripes. Thanks, you guys.
This was probably one of the most difficult productions we've ever done, just because we started 2 weeks late because before all the deal making was done. And then on top of that, we got some time cut out of our schedule because the show had to air a certain amount of time before Revenge of the Sith was going to come out. So it was very difficult time-wise, but also we wanted to make sure the quality was the same as the first episodes. So we came up with this kind of faster system of making it better in a way, where we basically took, because Bryan didn't have a lot of time to do the storyboards, so instead of doing them kind of full size, Bryan did all the storyboards kind of like thumbnails. I mean, his thumbnails are great, and they're enough for us to go by. And then Paul, myself, Andy Soriano, Andy Bielk, Mike Kim, we ended up drawing all the storyboards as like mini layouts. And in animation production, it basically goes from storyboard, and then that gets blown up to the actual field, and in layouts you draw how the characters are going to finally look before it goes to the animator, and then the animator animates it. So we basically took one step away from the production that we can like combine two steps. And it sounded like a great idea at the time, but it was a tremendous amount of work. I mean, it made the show look really good because it was more of our drawings on the screen, but it was extremely difficult.
Everyone out! No! We must pursue! General, we can't. The survivors will die. We have no time. Ayla. Shakti! They're stabilized, sir. They just might make it. And the others?
Just
They
a
are
quickie,
all
I think
dead,
that these two characters have a secret love affair. That's not supposed to Shakti and Ki-Adi-Mundi. They're very close.
It's never talked about. It's very secret. Hush, hush.
Before we started this, we took a trip to Lucas, and we got a chance to read the script for Revenge of the Sith. And I was trying to think back. I had lunch with George before we started this, and he kind of told me what he wanted us to do. First thing was to finish the Ki-Adi-Mundi story from episode 20. Second was to feature basically the story that he said we should do. Because in the beginning, I wasn't really interested in doing it because we were so burnt out from doing the first set of 20. And so he told me that the beginning of Revenge of the Sith is the siege of Coruscant. And he goes, why don't you guys do the kidnapping of Palpatine? And to me, that sounded really exciting because now all of a sudden we're really kind of bridging the two stories together, not just making up our own stories. We're doing the story before the story. So it seemed
real
really,
Star Wars.
yeah, it seemed really exciting. And he says that Anakin's a Jedi Knight. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm sure you've got specific instructions for the Jedi knighthood, because that's such a huge part of, Star Wars. And he goes, no, just, I think we all wanted to do so much more for his knighting.
Right.
But
there's just no time.
There's just no time, and we didn't have any kind of situation to make it like a journey and stuff. So one of the themes that we put in through the whole thing is actually his Jedi trial. And that was that little scene with young Anakin and Qui-Gon.
Right.
Was kind of...
it was almost like the Force telling Yoda that it's like a vision, like a dream, like Anakin's trial is going to be different. It's not going to be normal. He's ready, but it ain't going to be the way that you guys think it's going to be. So
he will be tested.
He will be tested,
you do
but
it
not
in the classic way or not. It's going to happen. And so then throughout the story, we have, him having his tests throughout his journeys throughout the war, as opposed to doing it at Jedi school.
And especially the one that happens at the tail end of the show with,
final
the
test.
Nelvons and all that stuff. That's the big test.
So that was one of our first themes that we wanted to do. Then after reading the script, we realized that Anakin and Obi-Wan were friends at this point, so we really wanted to support that idea that they're friends.
Well, he is a cunning warrior, and our best pilot.
But he is reckless with his gifts.
Sometimes in the past, yes. But regardless, Anakin has been through things more difficult than the trials. Surely he passed a trial of skill when he defeated that dark assassin on the fourth moon of Yavin. And he endured...
Here he is sticking up for his pal right here.
Yeah.
And we also want to tie in stuff like, there's the line here where Mace says, politicians have no voice in Jedi Matters, because there's a lot of that stuff going on with Mace Windu. In the final movie, there's a lot of stuff in the script with some of the scenes actually got cut out, I think, where it's some of the extra dialogue and stuff of Mace bagging on Palpatine and showing his distrust and all that kind of stuff like this. So this was our way of also putting that in as a hint, because who knows how much that stuff's going to end up in the
reinforcing,
final movie. Just reinforcing,
strengthening
the
their
themes,
viewpoint.
Stuff that you'll see in the movie when the audience goes and sees it, if they watch this first.
Need all the knights we can. Unorthodox young Skywalker's career has been.
See, he says it right there. Also, we had ideas. Part of the vision thing with showing a hint of Dagobah was also to hint that maybe that's where Yoda perhaps got the idea to go to Dagobah. Who knows? Just trying to geek out on the whole Empire thing.
Just connections.
Just connections
film
as deep as we can make it. Because one of the ideas was like for the trials, we thought, hey, wouldn't it be neat if they had this swamp-like area secret in the bottom of the Jedi Temple? When they do the final thing, they always take the Jedi down there and they go into this tree. But there was no time to explore all that, so that was our quick version.
There's a Duloc.
Cylon right there.
Cylon. Oh, that's not legal.
Isn't that guy from G-Force?
There's just a lot of stuff.
So, one of the other themes we wanted to explore is we wanted to explore Padme and Anakin's love relationship and their secret marriage. So we had this kind of mysterious being following Anakin, and of course it turns out to be Padme.
This love story bit right here, Genndy kind of came up with and boarded and wrote really fast. It's like, I know what I'm gonna do. We need a love scene kind of thing.
I thought it was really cute that Genndy grabbed the love scene. I'm doing this.
Right.
Oh, really? Well, I thought no. I got it.
That's hilarious.
Because I had this vision of
C-3po joke too.
You wanted the intimacy, and then I just wanted them close, like they couldn't move. And one of the first ideas I had was them like avoiding people through like a labyrinth of alleyways and stuff, but it was way too complicated to do. And the sequence isn't supposed to be about them running and escaping. It's just them kind of having a moment together in the shadows.
Right. Also to help reinforce the fact that they actually are in love.
Continue. And then plus they're married and kind of remind the audience about all the stuff that happened in Attack of the Clones.
Also to show his frustration in the relationship.
Or any other city, and most importantly in my heart, I will always love you.
You do look really good in the dark.
Annie.
That's a funny line.
Miss Padme! Miss Padme!
And Anthony Daniels once again did the voice for C-3po.
That's right, yes.
And there's Sam Snoodles going to work over there with his briefcase.
It's always a good idea after you do something serious to do something completely ridiculous. And probably my favorite thing that we've done in the whole series is the C-3po Striptease. They reveal his gold plating.
Without notifying...
You look different, 3PO.
Oh, it must be this disguise.
No, 3PO. It's your new gold plating.
Gold plating?
Oh, yes.
I like the fact that Anakin just geeks out over it's like modifying a car or like a ship or something like that.
He's all about that.
So hilarious.
New rims.
Yeah, totally.
This is one of the
rims.
It was one of
musical
the
sting is amazing.
one of the hardest music stings because we talked about it, and I was telling Jim Venable, I go, I want it to be stripper music, but it can't be stripper music because it's Star Wars. So we need to blend something together, and we listened to some of the music.
John Williams stripper music.
That's right. Some of the music that John Williams used for the comedy bits between R2 and 3PO, and there was actually a lot of really funny, weird things that worked well.
When the council requests your presence, it is always of great importance.
If I'm late for another scolding, does it really matter?
Scolding?
Working more Qui-Gon magic into the thing.
Yeah, and Paul is our kind of Qui-Gon fanatic. Anytime that he has a chance to bring Qui-Gon in, he does.
Qui-Gon Rudish.
Which is cool, because Qui-Gon is a great Jedi.
But also, you know, since it harkens back to a character that was from Episode 1 and, you know, so long ago by the time you're seeing this, it can help add a little bit more depth, the fact, you know. Maybe also give some more depth to Anakin with the fact that even though he knew Qui-Gon for such a brief amount of time, that he still had an effect on him, you know.
Yeah, you know, Anakin's all about hanging on to all those losses in his life, and so I wanted to bring that one up too. Obviously, we know he lost his mother, and I think that like Qui-Gon was his original father figure, not really accepting Obi-Wan as a father figure, more as his older brother, and that's where their rivalry came through.
Now, why was there not a purple lightsaber? Because Mace is supposed to be there, but there was like
it's a boo-boo, and we tried, and then it just somehow didn't.
Cuz, Brian, cuz.
It was an accident, right? I mean,
because Mace is protesting this. He doesn't like the Skywalker punk.
Right.
He's not into it.
That's what people think, but it was just a mistake. So we did that, harkening back to the classic way that you knight a knight in Middle Ages times and stuff, you know. I figure if you're going to knight a guy, you got to dub him in the classic way.
Yeah.
With a little flourish of the lightsaber, it's kind of cool, you know, get rid of the
There's
rat
the
tail.
Japor snippet.
Yep.
When we went up to Lucasfilm and read the script, we noticed that the Japor snippet made it back into the movie, so we decided we needed to have it in our cartoon.
Yep.
Little keepsakes.
And also the start of Revenge of the Sith, R2's with Anakin, so we wanted to explain, you know, okay, well, Padme hands, you know, R2 over to Anakin, and
that's his little keepsake.
That's his little keepsake.
And also in the Star Wars movies, the end of the movie is always kind of this musical sequence without dialogue, combining visuals, whether it be a parade or celebration or a death scene. And so I always try to follow that idea and finish it kind of musically.
I wonder how
You want to talk a little bit about the idea for this?
Well, it was an inspiration from a comic book that I read when I was a kid, and basically it's kind of, we wanted, you know, to us Jedis are very, you know, they're almost mythical heroes in a way, so we wanted to play on that fact. So what better way to play on it than to have somebody else kind of talk about how amazing they are, you know?
This guy's so amped. He's like, man, I can't wait. Millions of Jedis. How many? 1,000? No.
And
well, okay, how about 80? I know, I was, yeah.
And so it's like, you know, it's like a Western, and then you only have the two cowboys riding into the town, you know.
And then the ships descend from on high.
And it was kind of a funny idea, and I was real insecure about it for a while, but then, you know, we always kind of got a laugh on it. And the performance was so good. I think T.C. Carson did the voice, and it was very happy. And here we reveal them in their Episode 3 gear.
So it's been a big time jump since he got knighted. So time has transpired. He's, you know, Anakin's being amazing. It's a montage of him being totally cool.
So this whole montage is about
Sassy Tin's horn is growing
most
back.
of the war. You know?
Yeah.
Like
just
these
continues.
2 minutes are probably like
supposed
2
to be
years worth of the Clone Wars.
Yeah,
So.
because we didn't want to repeat what we've done already and show more Clone Wars. We had this whole other story that we wanted to get into.
And we had to get to the end of it to bridge the gap with the new film.
Yeah.
And it was rough, too, because we had a lot of neat, cool stuff to show of them being, you know, amazing in the war, like working together as a team and stuff. There was one big, long shot we had of Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting side by side. Just one long, gratuitous shot. It was amazing, but there was just no time, so it never got animated. But
And actually, I forgot that this montage sequence had a lot of stuff taken out of it. There was this cool battle where Anakin fights one of the Hellfire droids in this bamboo forest. That got taken out.
Some crazy snail riders,
snail rider fight.
harpoon guns on their backs, and
The animation never turned out that great, so it was an easy cut. But there was a lot of cool visuals to it.
Right. It would have been nice if we could have kept it.
Yeah.
But
And also,
oh
we
well.
reveal his scar, which we saw in some of the pre-photos when they were making Revenge of the Sith.
how did he get it? That's not important. What's important is that we're together now.
And there goes the light.
Yeah. You know what that means.
Luke and Leia are born.
So when we started talking about Anakin and Obi-Wan's friendship, we kind of were thinking about, well, how do we show that they're friends without them saying that we're friends? And one of the things you always do with friends is you share a meal. And I'm very food conscious, a foodie-oriented person. So to me, the best way to show friendship is to have two guys around a meal.
Oh, here's
Commander Cody.
Commander Cody. Obviously, a reference to the old serial Commander Cody,
Right.
the Rocketeer type of dude
Yep.
that George likes. So,
All
all
right,
right,
rocket
give him a
forces.
backpack and we'll do our old 30s Rocketeer dude.
We also wanted to show him and Obi-Wan have that little, just something of a moment to, in the army that Obi-Wan and Anakin are co-leading. Commander Cody is like the main liaison, and obviously in Revenge of the Sith, he gets Order 66. He turns against the Jedi, so we wanted to have an opportunity once again to show Commander Cody being cool to Obi-Wan. So maybe later on in the Sith movie, you freak out more when they turn out to be bad
That's
guys.
not what I... Where did you get that
And
stuff
Genndy
anyway?
wrote all this dialogue pretty much here.
Feed off the living force.
And then I boarded this stuff out, and he definitely wanted Anakin eating the crazy bugs and the rest of
How
it.
did you penetrate the shield?
Because we wanted to show, like, Anakin being a cunning warrior. It's like all the stuff that Obi-Wan says in Star Wars. He's strong with the Force, he's the best star pilot in the galaxy, he's a cunning warrior and a good friend. So all those things we wanted to show here and reinforce as much as we could. So this was the aspect of showing the cunning aspect where he finds a secret way in.
It's also good to kind of strengthen it's like kind of like they're both opinions about the war. Like Anakin wants to fight and he almost doesn't mind it, but Obi-Wan knows that
Right.
war's not good and we want
Right.
to get out of it. And
It's like
so
Anakin's almost seeking that glory,
yeah, there's a lot of good stuff where it works on a lot of levels. Besides the friendships, you also get the ideas of what they stand for.
Right. It's not the wars that make you great, as Yoda says, but Anakin seems to feel that it does. Kinda. So in moments like this, we get a little chance to harken back to the original movies by playing on some of the old lines and stuff, like there's, alternatives to fighting, etc., things like this. It's just, doing the story where you get to this certain point and there's a time for a character to say something. And it's just like, well, it seems like Obi-Wan he's been in this situation before, kinda, so.
And the line about what an incredible smell you've discovered.
Yeah.
All units attack. Let's go.
So here goes Cody's rocket troopers. There was the designs for Revenge of the Sith of the guys, and we didn't know if they were going to be shown in the movie or not, but we thought it was cool, so it's like we got to show them for a little bit.
So are Wookiees.
And of course, and George said we could, I don't know if George said or Howard, they said we can show Wookiees, so of course, we're never going to turn down an opportunity to.
So we've got Tarkov and young Jacoba learning the ways of the hunt.
And also it was a way to show, because in Revenge of the Sith, they get word that, Kashyyyk has been invaded, so it was our opportunity to show
Right.
it. And this is like this is the beginning of our montage of showing, like, even though the clone forces are doing really well, that the separatists under Grievous's leadership are also doing really well. And the plan is, or the thought is, that even though the clones are victorious and they seem to liberate these systems, that the bad guys will just run around to yet another system that hasn't been touched yet and take it. So it's this never-ending chase. It's this battle that never seems to
Palpatine
improve.
has anything to do with that.
Well, I'm sure he has everything to do with it, but Grievous likes to think that it's his genius, but
And on the production note, all this stuff was come
there's
up
the
with
Rebo
later.
family.
Yeah.
There's young Max Rebo there with all the whole family, Maxine Rebo.
So there's a few things here where we first had the montage without the last 6 scenes,
Right.
and it always felt it felt short, and actually that's one of my favorite pieces of music is kind of the Separatist theme. And so we, at the kind of the last minute, we ended up kind of thumbnailing out, and Paul drew those extra scenes that we kind of compiled together from existing images. And then this was one of the ideas that we were really excited about, that we were hoping would make it in the final picture, is that Dooku actually trains Grievous, because we want to kind of give a little history of how does Grievous know to use a lightsaber.
Right.
You know, somebody's got to.
He's not force trained, but he's trained how to just use it like.
How can he kill a Jedi?
Yeah. So we had long discussions about the
yeah
behind the theology of using a lightsaber, and if anybody can do it, or if it's just only people with force sensitivity.
He's got some super cybernetics, you know,
right, which give him an
speed
edge,
and strength,
yeah.
and all kinds of crazy powers.
And we decided to have Dooku teach him. And what was great is that in Revenge of the Sith, I think they added the line where, you know, Grievous says, "I was trained by Count Dooku," which made us really happy because we feel like we really made a contribution.
And then also, the lesson that Dooku is training Grievous is to plant a seed as to why, you know, because I think George hadn't really locked down exactly what he wanted to do with the character for Grievous.
Yeah, and the way George pitched Grievous to me was that he's kind of one of those old, you know, B-serial villains where he does something bad and then he, you know, twirls his mustache and runs off. Yeah, he always escapes.
But before that, we had been told that he's like this ruthless, totally capable Jedi killer.
Right.
So it's like, well,
yeah, I think he was still kind of working it
out.
Yeah.
So what we did is we just had Dooku explain, you know, this is why. And for us, and to also explain to the audience who may have been concerned or wondering after seeing the first batch, like how he could take on these Jedi, it is a mind game. It's like almost the strategy is he assaults them with so many of his troops that they're worn down, they're weak, they're unfocused. Then he can show up, you know, super cool and confuse the heck out of them with his crazy moves and stuff like that, and that's how he can kind of defeat him. So we have Dooku claim that's just like, if any one of these elements, fear, surprise, or intimidation, is missing, you better bail, because Jedi who are on the ball and haven't fallen for your tricks, they're not going to fall for it, because that's exactly what Anakin and Obi-Wan do when they first run into Grievous in Revenge of the Sith. They're not buying it. They're ready to take the guy. And Grievous knows it, and he runs. So we saw that before we started writing this a little bit, so we wanted to put that in to explain it.
Grievous was tricky, though, because when we started, he was not figured out when they wanted us to put him in the first batch of cartoons. And we really just had, like, 2 illustrations.
Exactly.
And an
explanation,
like a raw
yeah.
sculpt of the figure.
And they're just like, try it out.
And then that phone conversation with the guys talking to us about the things that he was capable of doing, you know, like how he could possibly move and all that kind of stuff. So that's when we started working out all the details of like, well, maybe he could be just really trippy with the way he moves, you know?
Yeah, they were like, oh, he's got ratcheting wrists, and flip out arms and all kinds of stuff.
So trying to use a little bit of
went nuts with that.
Capoeira and some other martial art ideas to really make him just seem really freaky.
Sir, the scan shows no enemy forces in the area.
You're sure?
Yes, sir. Just strange geothermal readings in Sector 8.
We'll check it out.
Sir.
So here we kind of are finally getting into our story a little bit. Planet Nelvon. Paul, do you want to...
Is a little reference to Nelvana, the Canadian studio that did all those wonderful Star Wars cartoons back when we were kids.
Ewok soap.
And Rock and Rule, a fantastic film by Nelvon Studios. So we use the dog-headed peoples that they were so fond of using as the natives here. Actually, also, Omar, the main character in Rock and Rule, his hair was very inspirational for Anakin's hair. I was like, let's see, how do we do rock and roll hair cartoon style?
Wasn't it also a little bit
Paul Stanley?
G-Force style?
Definitely, yeah. So between Omar and Mark from G-Force.
Or Ken the Eagle for the ones who totally love the super original versions of G-Force.
And it's not us.
I feel it too.
A disturbance. I've got a bad feeling about this.
Of course, the classic line always has to work its way in at some point.
We talked a lot about what...
oh, it's the Horax. Beware.
What story we wanted to tell. We wanted to have big themes and work in the Jedi Trials. We had, I think, a little rough time in the beginning because we kind of knew the themes we were working in, but how are we going to wrap a story around these themes in this limited amount of time? And then we got the invasion of Coruscant, so there was a lot of stuff to work in. These are great layouts by Mike Kim, who drew a lot of the monster.
Once again, a way of showing how Anakin kind of rushes into things that maybe he shouldn't.
As ordag as Indian, mindent erotodal, is volt an in probam.
It's real hard to do alien language without sounding like, brak tuku brak da da, without being fake. So we did kind of Hungarian, read by people who don't know Hungarian, with a little Russian mixed in. And
You had your in-laws translate it.
yeah, because my wife is Hungarian, and so I had her mom translate all our dialogue. And here's where really the stuff gets moving with the attack of Coruscant. And this was really...
Thank goodness for computer models on the spaceships and how tight this stuff looks. Way to go, Rough Draft.
We work with 2 other companies that are both under the same company. And we work with Rough Draft Korea, which handles all our animation duties and kind of follows up the blueprint that we send them. And then we work with Rough Draft Glendale, which did all our 3D animation with all the spaceships and modeling of the spaceships and all the computer stuff that we used. It's obviously, a huge city getting attacked, and the amount of time that we had was extremely difficult to do.
And there was a lot of stuff that got cut that we would have shown, but just tons of ideas that just, you just can't show all of it. So this begins our cross-cutting, which also is just non-stop crazy time cuts between the battle in Coruscant, which doesn't necessarily last super long, and what seems to take quite a long time with like everything that's going on with the Anakin's trials. So it's almost like they're on 2 different timelines almost, and we're just cutting back and forth, but they don't really lock up until the very, very end.
Don't tell them the things that don't work.
No, that works. It was planned that way, man. There's no other way to tell it. Otherwise, they would have called him, hey, why don't you guys come back right now?
Master.
Yes, Anakin, I know. There are only women and children.
It's funny. It seems like it's reminiscent of like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, but it wasn't planned. Completely.
Paul did an amazing job on the shaman here.
Yeah.
So people probably watching in Hungary will appreciate this a little bit more.
I think they were. I think somebody did understand everything that they were saying and was like translating online or something. Isn't that great, Delisle, who's doing the like the woman's voice or whatever? She does a great job.
Something plagues their land. Champion after champion.
Especially in the beginning, we wanted to keep the pacing very different than the pacing on Coruscant. When Coruscant was all action, really fast cutting, we wanted to really slow it down here. So you're not going from fast to fast to fast. You have a nice rhythm in the cutting and the pacing of the story. Until, of course, Anakin's story gathers speed, and then we're just going to full-out climax.
Right.
Yeah, in the first batch, they were so small, and we wanted to do action piece, action piece, action piece. And so when you watch it all together, it gets a little hectic. And so it's nice to have some time to slow down and do some slower parts in between things.
Right,
On this one,
you can play more
feels
with the pacing.
More like a solid through movie instead of lots of shorts tacked together.
Yeah, it's true.
I'd like to have a serious talk with your programmers.
Come on, 3PO.
Now we start into the, Mace being amazing section. We always have to have a Mace being amazing.
I think we're all kind of fans of Mace because he's number 2, most powerful. So we always want to
Yoda's right-hand man.
And explore him. So, of course, we featured him a lot in the first batch that we did, and we were talking about, well, who should we feature in here? And we're like, wow, we kind of gotta do Mace again because he's just so powerful. So we started talking about the sequence about him flying around, and because we didn't want to do another of the same thing where Mace fights 100 droids, because we did that before. Right. So what's he going to do? So we talked about it, and we came up with this idea with him flying on top of a vulture droid. And then you start having secondhand thoughts about stuff like
this. Will this technologically work? I don't know if this could how can he control it just by grabbing wires? And then you just go, yeah, but it looks so cool, we're doing it.
Right. Hey, man, he's got the Force.
Yep.
The Force can do
but
crazy
nobody wanted to animate these scenes.
No.
So Genndy actually animated all of these scenes with Mace flying on top of Vulture Droid himself.
The reg issues?
Yeah, because basically it was going to be too time-consuming to do the computer animation and then register and animate Mace on top of it. And I was saying, like, oh, it's not going to be that difficult. But they said, okay, well, then you do it. And I
Right. So
said-
the Vulture droid is a computer model that they
Yeah.
printed out, and then Genndy went through and drew Mace on top of it, registering to all the printouts.
And once I kind of figured out how to do the cape, the rest of it wasn't that hard. But it was definitely annoying to come home and then, have dinner and put my kids to sleep and then work for 3 hours animating cape and slashes. But it turned out great, so it was fun to do.
So here comes the crazy big space battle, which, we knew we'd see a bit of in the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, but you never really know how much you're going to see and all that kind of stuff like that. We had some of the pre-artwork. I think, what was it, Ryan Church that was doing? The stuff looks awesome. It's the same type of stuff that we were thinking about, like Battle of Coruscant. Oh, that's got to mean gigantic spaceships, toe to toe, slugging it out.
And I think
we wanted to see it too.
I think we wanted all the stuff to be longer because we had so many ideas for big pirate battles between two ships coming
that was
together.
One of the original ideas.
Yeah,
right.
And
that's
then we
definitely
finally got a chance to do boarding parties. We gotta have 2 pirate ships. With all the guys swinging on ropes across there.
Right.
But even though we had more time for these episodes, it's still
not enough.
It's still not enough. We still want
more
so many ideas. And
right. So the whole idea of taking someone else's ship just seems it's very Captain Blood. It's very Admiral Nelson. It's very swashbuckle. It's all that stuff, which is awesome. And you never see that, Big movies just don't do that, it seems like, even though it's such a cool idea.
So here, doing a little retro type of design here, where how about if there's good guy Vader costumes,
right?
Kind of.
Also,
hearkening to Vader is the Black Knight.
Right.
Here's the White Knight. Here's the Brown Knight.
Also,
Vader is the Black Knight.
There was stuff cut out this little bit right here. We had enemy fighters flying through the group of skydiving clone troopers and just hitting them, sending them flying and blowing and stuff like that. But for time, we had to cut that as well, which is a bummer. But oh well.
It's also something interesting you don't really see in Star Wars is a boarding party boarding a ship and attacking it.
Yeah,
we did in New Hope.
But that's like the only time.
Ship-to-ship
really,
combat,
right?
Well, that's after they'd actually brought it into the
see
hangar
an
bay.
explosion. Yeah.
They don't cut into the hull and.
Yeah, we don't get to see the troopers
While they're
jumping
still in
across
space.
to the blockade runway.
Yeah, exactly.
What's he saying?
They're summoning the spirit of the fire. The mother weeps.
Oh, Dark Crystal.
Yeah. Paul's very influenced, of course, by the Dark Crystal and
and the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yeah, and Native American mythos and stuff like that. So it had very, Native American feel, very
Again,
Anasazi and stuff. So he wanted to work a lot of that aspect into the mysticism of, Anakin's trials. Well, you can look at it. The Force is everywhere, even if people don't realize that that's what it is that they're dealing with. But it's everywhere.
They're saying ghost hand. They think...
That was fun. Humor is how into it Obi-Wan got.
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, you're gonna do this. This totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Right. Huh? Showing that, perhaps, Yoda had explained to Obi-Wan his vision. He was there at that, in the room when Yoda was talking about it. So,
so right before this sequence is where we had
the saving of Padme.
This Padme is ushering people out. Her and
Typho.
And there's a little C-3po comedy bit of him running away from all the droids.
Right.
And then it all had to go because we were just, even though we had more time, we didn't.
Right.
We ran out.
Yep.
Yeah, they give us an hour and we come up with 3 hours worth of stuff.
Right. Which is always the case. And of course, we always want to show how really powerful Yoda is.
When he's up against the wall, he can really pull out the big stuff.
Yeah, like all these Sorcerer's Apprentice shots.
Yeah, totally.
On the mountaintop.
Plus, with these
Force.
with these slow-moving ships, with a little bit of force adjustment, who knows? But he can possibly do crazy things to them. Mess up their anti-gravity, lowering abilities, so they're more easy to push around. Who knows?
And I'm a huge fan of kind of dressing up or getting ready to go into battle sequences. So like we start the episodes with the clone troopers gearing up to go into battle, and now kind of Anakin's turn to go into battle. So instead of gear, he gets mystical tattoos by leeches.
Did you just draw that drawing of him in those tattoos? Or did somewhere along the line we just thought he's got to be tattooed? I totally forget how that came about.
No, I think,
no, we
we were
discussed
going to
that.
do
We were discussing it,
this
right?
planet and do some old tribal type of things.
Right.
So
Somehow on the
It's like his war paint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was, once we came up with that, we're like, oh, yeah.
And this was my favorite scene. Just him adjusting the buckle seemed just something was real about it, and the sound turned out great. And
Right.
actually, talking about the
sort of
sound,
natural business.
Eric Foreman, who did all our sound at Lucasfilm, at Lucas Sound, he's just so great. I got a chance to talk to Ben Burt a little bit too, because he was kind of a fan of this, and because we were using a lot more sound from episode 3, he was able to kind of give us stuff, and then Eric would fine-tune it and change it for animation, wherever it needs to be changed. But it was just, first time I met Ben Burt, he's a super nice guy, very friendly, and he goes, hey, you want to see where we work? And I was like, yeah, of course. So he took me to his office, and it was just like a, unassuming office, whatever. And then there was this little cabinet with all these knickknacks and stuff that he's collected through the years. And I go, it's really funny. I remember the one thing, there's like, certain things burn an image in your mind. And I said, when I was a kid, I watched the Making of Star Wars special, and there was a guy hitting a wire to make the laser sound, And he goes, oh, you mean this? And it was like the original picture of him and it was him doing it.
Right.
And I go, yeah, it's great. And he goes, and there was this little broken up keyboard. And he goes, oh, this is what I used to make the R2 sounds.
Man, when we saw that, we got on our bikes and we drove around town with wrenches, just looking for wires to bang on.
Yeah. And so he turns on this little Casio player, what it looked like, and it's like, he's got a little hump to it. Then he goes, and he took the mic to his mouth, and he goes, and totally did R2, and that's how.
That's so crazy.
That's how he actually did it.
Our slam cut to the coffee. Put everything to a
Palpatine
fever
enjoying
pitch.
the war.
Yeah. Shaak-Ti runs in with a couple Jedi that were part of the original contest, the tail end of the other series. They were the losers, but we
were the
dug their
winners in my
designs, and it came to a time, well, Shaak-Ti's got to have a few more Jedi with her. Let's just use those guys because they were totally cool. So in essence, the losers got a lot more screen time than the winner of the previous contest, which is pretty funny.
We have to go now.
And to introduce Grievous exactly the same way that we introduced him in Chapter 20, with kind of his footsteps coming, and then the peekaboo.
And have Shaak-Ti freak out a little bit because she remembers what all that was like the first time.
Remembers the beating she got last time.
Yeah, totally.
And
Poor Shaak-Ti, she's awesome.
One of the frustrating things is that they changed colors on us a lot. And we initially had drawings and paintings of Grievous being kind of all in white in this kind of silvery cape and outfit, and then he ended up having like a black cape, which would have worked better for us.
Saw a final render, and he had that ivory kind of crust on his enameling on his surfaces.
And then at one point we found out he had the red interior of the cape, so we made the cape red inside.
And then the film came out, and then he had a black cape.
Yep.
It's like it just keeps changing all the way through.
Take him.
This was pretty fun and brutal to board out.
It's pretty fun to lay out, too.
So punishing. I love that move. It would have been nice to see Grievous do some of this stuff in the movie as well. But at that point, Anakin and Obi-Wan were on the case, and there's nothing he can do against those guys. So there was no more cannon fodder for him to take out. But
And we had there's a chainsaw sound coming up. And when I was talking to Eric Foreman, who does the sound, he's like, so what do what's going on in here? And I go, he's just totally wrecking those clone troopers up. So it's got to sound super violent, just really intense to get that joke through.
The Vader joke is good.
And I go, it's going to be buzzsaws and all this stuff. And he's like, and I was kind of half kidding. And he goes, really, buzzsaws? And I'm like, yeah, it's got to be everything. And then I show up to hear the preview, and sure enough, the buzzsaws.
But also, like, part of the reason why you
Works out
kept it, didn't you keep it also because it was just a little bit of a Sam Raimi moment? Felt just a little bit Bruce Campbell, Evil Dead, just because like chainsaws are always funny.
Yeah,
just the sound of that thing.
But it just worked, and it didn't draw attention to itself as much as I thought it would. And this sound that he did was great with the
wheezing.
The force-assisted mega vocal blast.
Yeah, reading stuff about their four throats or whatever, and like, okay, they have these very vocal abilities, so if you amplify that with the force,
might as well.
Crazy sonic blast would be fun. Each Jedi can
Hey, everybody.
use his
Do different
own
things, yeah.
powers in different ways. Actually, his name is Roron Korob,
Which is homage to
reference to Ron Cobb, the guy who designed him, half of the creatures in the cantina,
in the original Star
and
Wars.
art directed Conan even.
Yeah,
That's right.
another
And then his
favorite.
white friend over here is Falmudama, which is named after a Middle Eastern bean dish. When in doubt, use an exotic food name.
Another one of my favorite ideas was the four throats, and I was really excited about it. We took so much time to do this debris because it just wouldn't seem right, and whenever we got scenes that didn't quite right, then I put the shaky cam in
To hide the
because
bad
you just don't have.
But
you
it
just-
works good.
Yeah, you just don't have time a lot to make things perfect. So whenever it's not perfect, if you watch any of the stuff, whenever I put a shaky cam in, that means it wasn't quite right.
We're being jammed. We have no communication. We're on our own.
The introduction of the bodyguards.
Yeah.
Their little fart sticks.
So by the time we got to this point, we were so far behind schedule. It was very daunting. So I told Bryan as he was boarding it, okay, don't spend the time on the fights. Just do all the boarding so we can do all the follow-up, and then later you thumbnail all the fights and then we'll put them in because we had so much fighting in the fourth chapter.
But we had to get the full story done so everyone could get working on
Exactly.
it. So.
Right. So then after we got through it, Bryan started doing all the fights, and there's like every other scene is like this 20, 30, 40 pose fight, and it started stacking up, and I ended up drawing a lot of it, and it was just like it's never gonna end, and we're getting closer and closer to the time, and I don't know how we're gonna finish it, and so to keep it all organized, I created a little box, and we called it. We had a bad word box.
The poo box.
Yeah, basically. And this box just hung out in my office for a while, and Bryan kept coming in, putting a stack of 40, 30 Post-its right in it. And it was extremely frustrating. And then ended up, we had to cut some stuff, and then it all came together. And Darrick, maybe you can talk about the evolution of this scene a little bit with Steve.
Yes, this is the flashback sequence, and Steve Jennings, we hired him to come in, and he did this whole sequence in Maya. Paul did all the layouts and the models and everything for it, and then we just gave him all the materials, and then we trusted him to animate the whole sequence. But this is basically Anakin's vision of what is going to come in the future. So Steve worked for about 14 weeks, I think, on this sequence, and he would show us the various stages of where it was at. And it actually came down to, I think, the day before we were going to deliver this show.
Yeah.
Where he would walk in with the final rendering of it, and it was actually the wrong version on the disc.
Heart attack.
And it's very ironic that the most 2D flattest looking thing in Star Wars in our show ended up being computer animated.
Yeah.
It's just because it was a one scene that was very complicated, and because you can only have kind of one shot at it.
Right.
And already Korea was so overwhelmed that they weren't even sure if they could finish it.
And we hadn't even given him the layouts yet.
Right,
for it,
we weren't
so.
finished with it because we were still kind of figuring it out.
Right.
So yeah, that sequence, there's been discussion. What is it? What does that mean? All that. It should work on several levels, hopefully. That, it's an ancient story about something that happened to a Nelvon warrior. It's what's happening right now to the people on Nelvon, and it's also
what could happen.
What's gonna happen to Anakin
if he doesn't learn from the test?
Embrace the power of evil. It will consume you in the end.
Which he totally does. He doesn't learn.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, I think so.
God.
Well, I haven't seen Revenge of the Sith yet, so it's really tough.
Yeah, right. Oh man.
So this is where most of the bleep box stuff came in.
And also, unfortunately, it's like because of the schedule we had, poor Korea, some stuff they'd be able to handle well, and other stuff they were just so swamped that, some stuff just wouldn't be as on the ball as they could because they were just as strapped as we were, and we were all suffering.
Yeah.
you know. And so as a result, it made it difficult because some fights turn out really, really nice, and then some fights turn out a little rough.
Slippers.
Yeah.
And they had people working around the clock.
Round the clock, yeah, they were working so hard.
But it seemed like Bryan every day would come in and add 3 more scenes to the box.
Right.
It never seemed to end. And the box just
Huge stack of
it just kept getting
choreography.
more and more full, and like.
But
every
we all
day
knew
just,
what we were getting into because all those scenes were there. It's like.
And Genndy would just pick the box up and go, oh, why, why? And then the phrase would just be, "I hate you, Bryan Andrews. I hate you."
Because there's all these poses, but we want the fights to be like fast and on the ball, like you don't.
Yeah, and the thing is, in television, there's no way you can cheat around it. It's not like you can give it to an animator and go,
There's a
okay, I
little
need
sign where it says Yoda endorsing you to brush your teeth.
Right. That you can't go, you know, okay, you do this, we got about 10 seconds, give me a cool fight. It all has to be figured out, and that's why, I mean, we did that a lot in Samurai Jack also. And here, it's like, you got to draw every pose, every slash, every block, every antic. And it just gets to be a lot. And now we've got moving fights through trains, and it just gets really intense. In the meantime, the time's shrinking, the time is shrinking, and the time is shrinking.
This is another one of those scenes where the soundtrack really ends up selling it.
Yeah, the music is incredible for the scene.
And just the sound of the trains and everything.
Yeah.
Really took it over the top.
And it's hard to do futuristic trains because iconically trains are chunk 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 like a L train or a normal train, and you wanted that sound. And I go, I just want to hear the clank, a clank, a clank. But there's no clanking. It's all hovering or whatever.
Yeah. So when we were riffing on ideas way in the beginning of like, okay, well, what's going to happen on Coruscant? And we know that Shakti and whoever Jedi she's with are running around with Palpatine trying to get to his secret underground train to take him to the secret bunker, whatever. We were just riffing on stuff, and we were trying to think of things that we can do, and then somehow we just stumbled upon like this train thing, because their main avenue of escape gets blocked, so now they're running through the city. So what can they run into? And we just thought, well, a train, like there's a massive train yard, and it's just, we just started riffing on the idea, and it sounded very, very exciting. So that's how this whole thing got born.
It's always fun to fight on top of a moving train.
Yeah,
that's true. Or around a bunch of them that.
Play Frogger.
Yeah, you play Frogger.
Watch out for the traffic.
And so it ends. A valiant effort, but as you can see, ultimately futile. Now, Jedi, prepare yourself, for you are about to leave this world.
I don't think so.
They're great. Dun, dun. There's a couple of sounds that are really subtle that are great. When Fal Madama talks.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
It was great. And this little dun, dun. And it's great to have somebody, because we're all into it, of course, making it, but Eric Foreman, who does the sound, is one of our new additions to the team. I mean, he did the sound effects last year, but it was great to have somebody like him who's just as excited and into it as we are.
Right.
Not even on a Star Wars level, but just on a filmmaking level. Like, oh, this will be great, and this works great, and just to create the sound. And he knows his job to add to everything that we're trying to do.
Right.
And it was, it could have been a lot worse because he had no time either.
Right.
And he goes, I don't know how I'm going to do this.
But he sure did.
And he did, yeah. I mean, it's kind of
textural stuff.
Yeah, and we've been doing television for a long time, so we always know somehow it gets done at the end. But this is the first one. Like, I would keep walking into Darrick's office in the morning, I go, there's no light. There's a big, long, dark tunnel, and there's no light.
Yeah, it got really crazy towards the last few months. It was just...
There's some grievous schematics back there.
Yeah.
Even in the last couple weeks, we were staying up until like 2 in the morning, just over the internet on Instant Messenger.
That's right, yeah.
Calling retakes and just sharing scenes that I would download at my house from Korea. Right. And I'd send them to you, and then we would, talk about them, and then I'd have to send them notes from my house. And just because they were working around the clock as well. And
yep, it was very intense.
I didn't even think we were going to make it there. Because we didn't even get a traditional work print for the 5th show. It was
just
to us
random
in
scenes. Yeah. So we never put it together until later, and there was still scenes missing, and
you had to cut together the original layouts into that work print in order to even have sound effects done to
sound music. So Eric was doing sound effects, and Jim Venable was doing music to not moving pictures. It would just be boards. And you kind of hear about that sometimes in feature world, because they do a temp track. Right. And then a rough track, and then a final. But in television, it's just unheard of.
Specimens, but they're not ready. I said unleash them.
So these mutated Nelvon warriors, we talked about their design a little bit and fooled around, and Paul did these. We just wanted this big hulking mass.
Wait.
And I was always like, that foot was never squishy enough as I wanted. I wanted the fat to roll over the calf, and just never. Some things you can't get away with.
So this clone commander dude's got an old Joe Johnson decal on his helmet. Some of the old Mandalorian decals.
Is that Captain Fordo?
That's Captain Fordo. He used to work for Hasbro.
Maybe he'll get a figure one day, unless he already has. Did they make that figure?
No.
Oh, okay.
There's the Kaibuck.
Yep.
He's actually a native of Kashyyyk, although genetically similar to a Tauntaun. But we know that Yoda, one of his favorite vacationing spots is Kashyyyk.
Yeah.
And kind of to give credit to somebody who probably doesn't get a lot of credit is our director overseas, director Jim. And I've worked with Jim since the beginning of Dexter back in 1994. And Jim's great. And one of the things about working with an overseas studio is we don't see him as an overseas studio, we see him as an extension of our studio. And especially when it's something as difficult as this, where you want everybody to give it their all, and so they feel like they have an ownership of it.
Right.
So he did a lot of these stuff at the very end, and his stuff is really great. He's an amazing animator, and basically makes everything better.
Right.
He just puts in all kinds of nice subtleties that you usually don't see in TV animation.
Yeah.
Right.
We left a lot of the effects animation team as well.
Yeah, because they already did the whole, chapters 1 through 20, so we figured, okay, they've got a good handle on effects. We really don't even have time to draw explosions for them. They'll have to just figure it out.
We gave them reference from the previous series,
right.
But then it was basically up to him to create the effects and stuff for it.
And you.
This selfless sacrifice will be long remembered.
And Palpatine's role in this was kind of a tough one, because he kind of comes off comical and he's just dragged along on this journey.
Right.
And we were kind of afraid of his personality. But then in Revenge of the Sith, it worked well together, because he does kind of run with them everywhere, and it seemed to be fine.
Plus, seeing that early footage of him on the bridge when, they're fighting Dooku and Palpatine is all pretending to be captured and all that stuff. His antics seem so, goofy. He's so gleeful that his plan seems so working that it gave us a lot more confidence to play him the way we were playing him in this, based on what George seemed to be doing in the next one.
Control yourselves. You must stop. I will defend myself.
Paul Douglas, who's our editor, did all these flashes on the computer and all these light effects and different things just to kind of enhance the picture.
Yeah.
And I wanted more, I wanted a little flash on each laser and all this stuff, but again, just time.
That run is hilarious. This big guy.
What?
That's a good line.
Yeah.
What?
It's amazing that
I don't
Anthony
get you.
even-
What?
can even understand what the heck he's trying to get across. But he does. So I guess the concept was that we wanted to use some of those Techno Union guys again, because, they're hilarious.
We wanted to use them first batch, and then they're like, no, we got something going on. Why don't you use the banking clan?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Sort of
fine. And then finally,
now
oh,
we get to
okay, now
use
we
them.
get to
So
use
the
these
the idea is perhaps maybe they're the ones supplying some of the technology that allows Grievous to be Grievous, which is why we have those schematics on the wall. But also it's maybe secretly, whether it's Grievous, separate from Palpatine, who knows? Getting tired of the droids. Maybe they're too easily defeated. What if they're experimenting creating a hybrid, kind of like how Grievous is, like cyborg, mutated, whatever. It's let's mutate these guys, make them really buff, but then also give
Techno
them
Union's
these
always trying to come up with new product to get out on the market.
Totally. So that was kind of the concept for that. And then here's Striptease, big crazy. Ton
And
of martial art fight.
Brian had a lot more fighting to it too, but it was just at
Just
a certain
time.
point, it's enough is enough. I can't draw this anymore. And Andy Bial came on kind of real late and helped us draw a lot of these scenes here.
But it didn't stop Brian from coming in my office every morning going, oh, where is that? Oh,
Oh,
man.
totally. So you see him get lost, or this is cut or whatever. It'd be like, no.
The music here turned out really great because it was really very reminiscent of samurai style.
Yeah.
I just like to see staff fighting like this.
Yeah,
Way
it's
to
something
go, Bryan.
you never see. That's why we made that choice. It was good that Genndy made that call. It's like, let's just go ahead and have her take one of those things. And I'm like, all right.
Plus, it's good the way it intercuts because it's just building and building and building. And
Right. Then at the end, to have her grab her saber back and do it with both, harking back to, like, you know, certain Hong Kong flicks, Jet Li style, Wong Fei Hong, where he's got like staff and possibly another weapon at the same time.
Andy Shirano did some great layouts in this section.
Yeah. If you ever had the time, you should
This
really
one.
still frame.
Oh, my brother.
Still frame some of those drawings because they're really amazing. And to do stuff with that kind of detail on television, I know I keep talking about it, but because it's people don't really appreciate how much work goes into TV with something that looks like this. It is quite a feat, and it's everybody who really puts the extra effort in. Nobody works 9 to 5 on this production.
Yeah, not on this.
It's 9 to 5 and then 8 to 12.
Yeah.
This is all done with sound, and I'm a huge fan of sound effects, and just to do really break down the sequence so it's not sound effects and music and dialogue all going through. I really like to select, like, okay, this action sequence is going to be all sound effects. This sequence is going to be all music with very low sound effects. And especially because in television you don't get the dynamics that you do in theater, it cleans it up a bit, so the mix sounds a little nicer and crisper.
I just gotta mention that Matt Lucas, the guy who's doing the Anakin voice, no relation to George. He does such a good job with Anakin, and you know, I always liked his Anakin, but especially after seeing Revenge of the Sith, there's a part, you know, when Anakin Hayden gets all jacked up and he's screaming in great pain, and it sounded just like that when he got his arm blown off in this version. I remember thinking in the theater, it's like, that sounds just like Matt Lucas doing
That must
Hayden.
be why they picked Matt.
I know, but he doesn't
sound alike.
But for that angry scream, I mean, there was no precedent for that at the time when Matt was recording this. You know what I mean? He just did it Hayden
Yeah,
style,
he sounds like him.
and it totally worked. It's like,
And this, to me, this is
blew
one
me
of the
away.
most disturbing things that we've done, because
Oh.
Paul had this whole idea about
Yeah.
doing the choke and stuff with the stump.
Force choke.
And
Yeah.
I was
Watch out,
like,
kid.
wow,
You're
we're
walking really close to the dark side here.
Yeah.
Are we really gonna do a force stump choke?
Yeah, is he gonna crush somebody's throat and have his eyes pop out? You know,
It was so odd to do it with the stump, but it
But it's
it worked great.
It's cool because it's like you don't necessarily need, you know, I mean, the force is all around you, right? So you don't necessarily need your arm.
Yeah.
No.
To do it.
Plus, we
Thus
also
the
noticed
ghost hand.
in the episode 3 pre-art that Anakin had a different robotic arm. You know, and that
Yeah.
Right.
so we had to figure out a way to kind of change that over before the movie started.
Right.
So we conveniently blew his arm off.
Exactly. It's like poor Anakin keeps losing that arm. Those poor ladies. All their dudes come back totally jacked.
They might have some herbal treatments and things that might be able to, help these
to
guys
reverse
out.
the mutation.
Yeah, they have some ancient magic.
Maybe. So the first version
But it doesn't
of this,
really matter because look,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
about acceptance.
I know, I know.
They're not
That's
they're not
right.
clinging to those.
I think the
No matter what, that's his Apu, Brian.
Yes. Was the first version of this just like a little bit too saccharine? It was a little bit too sweet. We like changed just a couple shots, or we just took a couple things out to
Yeah,
make
we
it
kind
a
of
little less.
edited a little bit, and then I just made them more intimate with the hugging and all this stuff here. And Apu is actually a term of endearment in Hungarian that I call my wife's grandfather. We call him Apu, so I thought it'd be very appropriate to put in.
So they get their new tribal wrap, which later on we show Anakin with it, but then later on we show that he's
Well done, Anakin.
gotten rid of it and given himself a new robot arm and trying to, you know, bring together those themes of like, you know, he didn't learn his lesson. He's still into the technology. He's, you know, drifting away from what the Force really is. All that stuff, trying to wrap it in with just such simple symbology, whether you pick up on it or not. But
the Nelvons were able to let go of all that. And
exactly.
Find acceptance back home, and Anakin still can't.
Nope. But if only he would have talked about his feelings to Ben.
Yeah.
It all
Well,
just put
it
it out on
all
the
stems
table
from his own mistrust in himself. So.
Yeah.
So all this lighting and color was all done with me and the editor, just to give this more drama because it's a big climax sequence, and we're literally out of time. Maybe we have 2 weeks to deliver, and we wanted to do all these different lighting things.
Right.
And the big reveal of his arms, and so we were just okay, put a blue filter, some lights, and all these flashes.
Originally, they were like, don't do the separating arms. We want to save that for the reveal in the film.
Yeah, right.
And
That was the first time.
And then all the scuttlebutt on internet and everything, everyone knew that he had 4 arms. And then so they were like, well, how come he didn't have 4 arms in the cartoon? What's up?
Because we were
like, all right, you guys can use it now.
we were told not to do it.
And it's good to point out that the delivery of this, I mean, we had 2 weeks, but it's actually, the delivery was like a day before it aired on television.
Right.
So this is coming up all the way to the point where we're actually working on the 5th episode as the other 4 had pretty much
aired.
Aired, and we were delivering the 5th one that day.
And Sharina had
she had to get on a plane.
On a plane to
our line
London.
Producer, yeah. And so before we kind of get into it, so we're in this time crunch, and our boss was Howard Rothman from Lucasfilm. I get a call from Howard Rothman, and he says that George has Grievous have a cough, and can you guys maybe put it in and explain how he got the cough? Because ours obviously doesn't have a cough. And
his voice was not decided upon.
And I go,
we had to do this. So.
And I go, Howard, we have a week left, or a month left before we deliver. And so this sequence right here was all after that. So we kind of got together and we talked about it. And I go, okay, let's have Mace crush his chest and then introduce the cough, and that's all we'll do. And then he'll try to stop him, and then he can't. And so basically, I thumbnailed it out. Paul drew it all. I animated it. Justin Thompson, who does our backgrounds, did all the backgrounds. And that was it. It was done. And it was super fast, but it worked out good. It gave a little bit more of intensity to it.
And they were full layouts too. They were every frame we just had them do cleanup overseas.
Shakti.
I failed.
And then there was also a bunch of back and forth as to whether or not we were going to be allowed to kill Shakti and our thing or not. Lucas was deciding back and forth. He's like, well, I'm not going to have her in the movie at all, to I'm going to show this little bit, to I'm going to change that little bit. And so we never...
Yeah, and we were real worried because Shakti is a huge prominent force in what we did. So if he all of a sudden decided not to use her, or he killed her in some other thing, we got very worried about it.
So also, if he was going to decide not to have her in the film at all, then well, let us kill her, because then it's going to give Grievous even more weight, because a known character is being, destroyed. But in the end, he said he was going to keep her in, and in the end, it turned out that she wasn't. Darn. So it's Anakin being a little Vader-like.
It's okay. We don't want to kill Shakti. She's too cool to kill.
I mean, that's why we thought we should have, because it would have made us cry.
Yeah.
No, that would have made Grievous terrible.
It's like,
We love her. We don't want to see her die.
So it was a good experience, extremely difficult. Definitely like to do it in different circumstances. But, that's television. You kind of get the hand that's dealt to you and you deal with it. Luckily, we were all experienced working together, and we were able to bring it all together. And we had a screening at a movie theater, and there's about probably 600 or more people. Yeah. And it was kind of the first times we watched it in the audience, and it was great to see the reaction, because there's laughter, there's cheers, and that's how you should really watch this stuff, is with a lot of people. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.